The story of the boy and the wolf. Once upon a time, where mountains embrace the sky and rivers flow like fairy tales, there lived a child named Salem in a small, quiet village. Salem was a shepherd whose daily task, which he considered boring, was to lead the flock to the green pastures on the nearby hill. Salem wasn't a bad child. He was intelligent and skilled, but boredom was his worst enemy. The village feared one thing: the legendary wolf, said to have the intelligence of a devil and iron claws. Every morning, Salem's mother would bid him farewell with the words, "My son, don't shout falsely about the wolf. The truth is worth more than any joke." But how could a shepherd child, in the majestic silence of the mountains, escape the trap of boredom? One sunny day, Salem sat on a large rock. The flock was grazing peacefully, and the valley was completely empty. Suddenly, a sinister thought flashed through his eyes. He summoned all his strength and shouted at the top of his voice, "The wolf! The wolf is attacking the flock!" In less than a minute, the village men, armed with sticks and axes, surged up the hill like a storm, advancing on the village elder, Hakim Abu al-Abidi, who could barely run. They arrived breathlessly to find Salem laughing loudly, the herd quiet, and the wolf nowhere to be seen. "A joke! Just a joke! Look at your funny faces," said Salem, nearly bursting into laughter. The villagers were outraged, and the village elders sternly rebuked him, but in the end, they returned to their work, their hearts tinged with resentment. This prank was repeated twice more in the following weeks. Each time, Salem had great fun and lost something even more precious: the trust of his village. Will there ever come a time when Salem truly needs a heartfelt shout-out? And what if the wolf was watching all these jokes, with a wicked grin? This is what we will discover in the middle of our story. The middle, the true price of joking. After 3 false cries, Salem became the butt of jokes in the village. Whenever anyone passed by, he would mutter, "There's the lying wolf boy." Salem felt upset, but his pride prevented him from apologizing. Meanwhile, Karmid, the biggest and smartest wolf in the forest, was watching from afar. Karmid possessed intelligence beyond that of ordinary wolves and understood the value of timing. He saw the child's false cries as a gift from heaven. They were performing the hypnotic function of the village for him. At dawn on a cold day, Salem took his flock as usual. But this time, he was cautious and reluctant to shout. The feeling of rejection from his villagers was painful. He climbed the hill, but this time, he felt a strange heaviness in the air. The birds weren't singing, and the sheep were more tense than usual. Salem looked around. The surrounding forest was unnaturally silent. Suddenly, he spotted it. It was a huge, gray wolf, its eyes glowing like burning embers in the dark. This wasn't just any wolf, it was a brick. The wolf moved slowly and confidently, in no hurry. It began its attack with strange intelligence. It didn't head directly toward the flock, but instead moved in a circular motion around Salem, separating him from the flock and making him an easier target. Salem was stunned with terror. This wasn't a dream, nor was it a joke. This wolf was real, and bigger and fiercer than he'd imagined. Salem realized that his life, and the life of his flock, depended on a single scream. Salem shouted as loudly as he could, "The wolf! The wolf is really attacking us. Help!" But this time, there was no movement in the village. He shouted again, his voice choking, "Please! This isn't a lie. It's real." In the village, people heard the sound. "Oh my God, has it started again?" whispered the grocer. "Leave him alone, he'll learn his lesson this time," said the blacksmith wearily. Even the village elder, always inclined toward positive skepticism, shook his head sadly. "He's lost our trust. If he's real, he'll have to defend himself." Salem's heart, however, was pounding like a mad alarm bell. He felt despair and the bitter truth. He had been robbed of his right to ask for help. When the bricked wolf realized the villagers weren't coming, he slowly smiled a savage smile. He began to pounce on the first sheep. Salem didn't give up. Despite his young age, his fear had turned into raging anger. He realized he had to do something on his own. He grabbed his stick, a heavy wooden staff used to gather sheep, and lunged at the wolf. Salem's goal wasn't to kill the wolf, but to distract it. An unequal battle began. The wolf was stronger and faster, but Salem was driven by a call to survival and a bitter sense of guilt. The herd retreated in panic, and Salem continued to try to fend off Carmide. He gave the wolf a slight scratch on his leg, but the wolf focused its attack on Salem himself, tearing off part of his coat before Salem could escape and hide behind a giant boulder. Salem was trapped. The wolf was watching him, and he had tasted the first sheep's blood. It was the end. The end. A lesson in trust and loyalty. As the wolf prepared to pounce on the hiding Salem, the unthinkable happened. At that moment, an old man, a traveling trader who had just arrived in the village, appeared on the horizon. The old man saw the scene clearly, the child's terror and the wolf's size. The villager had no doubts about Salem's scream. The old man took out of his traveling bag a large horn he used for alarms in his large town. He blew it with a resounding blast, shaking the entire valley, a sound the village had never heard before. The villagers took notice. This was not the familiar cry of a child. It was a new and strange sound, a true alarm beyond doubt. They rushed forward this time, first with curiosity, then with fear when they heard the angry howls of the wolf. When Carmide saw the large number of approaching villagers, the relentless child, and the strange horn, he realized the plan had failed. In a flash, he transformed from hunter to fugitive. He let out one last threatening howl, then retreated into the dense forest, disappearing from sight. The villagers arrived to find Salem exhausted, his clothes torn, his stick broken, but alive, surrounded by a single killed sheep. Everyone was ashamed, especially the village sheik. Salem's mother ran and hugged him, weeping. The villagers thanked the traveling merchant for saving the day with a new, sincere appeal. The village elders stood before Salem and bowed respectfully at the courage the child showed in confronting the wolf alone. He said in a strong voice that everyone could hear, "Salem, you made a mistake, and so did we. You made a mistake when you joked with the most precious thing we have, trust. We made a mistake when we abandoned you and believed that lying carries no punishment other than destruction. Today you taught us a double lesson, that lying is a weapon that should not be played with, because it kills honesty when it is most needed, and that doubt should never kill the duty to help." Salem never repeated his false joke. Salem learned that courage is not limited to confronting the wolf. It begins with facing the truth and responsibility. As for the villagers, they did not ignore any call for help after that. The voice of honesty was heard, even if it came from a child who had once made a mistake. From that day on, everyone in the village learned that trust is a bridge built only with honesty, and if it collapses, no savior may be able to repair it in time.